I stood in my kitchen holding the torn pieces of what had been the baby shower invitation, watching as my tears turned the pink cardstock into a soggy mess on my countertop. After 45 years of raising a family, I thought I'd seen it all, but this betrayal cut deeper than anything that had come before. "Mom, Vanessa just doesn't want any drama," my son David had explained over the phone 20 minutes earlier, his voice strained in that way it always got when he was caught between his wife and me. "She thinks it would be better if you didn't attend the shower. Her mother put a lot of work into planning it." Better if I didn't attend. I wasn't some distant relative or casual acquaintance. I was the grandmother, the baby's grandmother. I gathered the torn invitation pieces and dropped them into the trash. The shower was happening at a restaurant downtown in 2 days' time. I'd received the invitation 3 weeks ago and had already purchased a beautiful handmade quilt, crafted by an artisan in my quilting circle. It had cost nearly $400, but nothing was too good for my first grandchild. My hands trembled as I poured myself a cup of tea. At 63, I'd learned to weather life's storms with some measure of grace, but this felt different. This was my grandchild, my son's child, and I was being told I wasn't welcome at the celebration. I picked up my phone and scrolled to find the last text message from Vanessa. It had been months since she'd contacted me directly. Everything went through David now. I stared at her last message from December. "Thanks for the Christmas gift." 4 words, no warmth, no reciprocated holiday wishes. Just a perfunctory acknowledgement that told me everything I needed to know about how she viewed me. The problem was, I still didn't understand what I'd done to deserve this treatment. Things between us had been strained from the beginning, but I'd tried my best to be welcoming. When David first brought her home 5 years ago, I prepared all his favorite foods and made sure the guest room was perfect. She'd seemed pleasant enough then, if a bit reserved. The wedding 2 years later had been the first real sign of trouble. Her mother, Caroline, had taken over all the planning and made it clear my input wasn't needed or wanted. I'd swallowed my hurt and told myself it was just how things were done these days. The bride's family handled everything. I'd written the check David asked for and stayed out of the way. But since then, things had only gotten worse. Holiday plans always revolved around her family's schedule, with us getting whatever leftover time remained. David rarely called anymore unless he needed something, and when they did visit, Vanessa spent most of the time on her phone. And now this band from the baby shower for my first grandchild. The doorbell rang, startling me out of my thoughts. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand and went to answer it. Through the peephole, I saw my best friend Gloria standing on the porch, holding a casserole dish. "I made too much lasagna again," she announced as I opened the door, but her smile faded when she saw my face. "Margaret, what's wrong? You look like you've been crying." I tried to respond, but instead, a fresh wave of tears came. Gloria set the dish down on the entryway table and pulled me into a hug. "Come on, let's sit down and you can tell me everything," she said, guiding me to the living room sofa. "Is it David again, or that wife of his?" I nodded, trying to compose myself. Gloria had been my rock since Robert died 7 years ago. She was the sister I never had, and unlike my son, she always made time for me. "David called to tell me I'm not welcome at Vanessa's baby shower," I finally managed to say. "Apparently, I might cause drama." Gloria's face darkened. "Drama? You? The woman who didn't say a word when her mother-in-law wore white to her wedding. The same woman who smiled through Thanksgiving dinner last year, after Vanessa criticized every dish you prepared? That's rich." I sighed. "I just don't understand what I've done, Gloria. I've tried so hard with her." "You haven't done anything except exist as a reminder that David had a life before her," Gloria said firmly. "Some women are just like that. They want to erase their husband's past and control everything in their present." "But this is my grandchild," I whispered. "How can she keep me from being part of that?" Gloria squeezed my hand. She can't, not completely. David won't let that happen. But her tone lacked conviction, and we both knew David had become increasingly under Vanessa's influence over the years. You know what you should do, Gloria said after a moment. You should go to that shower anyway. Show up with your head held high and that beautiful quilt you've been telling me about. What's she going to do? Throw the grandmother of her baby out in front of all her friends? I shook my head. I can't do that, Gloria. It would only make things worse. Then what will you do with the quilt? I hadn't thought that far ahead. The quilt was upstairs in my craft room, wrapped in tissue paper and ready to be presented. I suppose I'll give it to them when the baby is born, I said quietly. If they let me visit, that is. Gloria made an indignant noise. If they let you visit? Margaret, you need to stop letting these people walk all over you. You're that baby's grandmother, not some random stranger. I knew she was right, but years of trying to keep the peace had worn me down. After Robert died, David was all the immediate family I had left. Our daughter Emily lived overseas with her husband and children, coming home only every couple of years. I couldn't risk pushing David further away. I just want to be part of my grandchild's life, I said. I don't want to cause problems. Gloria sighed. I know, honey, but sometimes you have to stand up for yourself to be respected. Remember how Robert's mother used to try to run your household until you finally put your foot down? I smiled faintly at the memory. Edith had been a formidable woman who thought her way was the only way. It had taken years, but I'd eventually found my voice with her. The difference was that Robert had always stood firmly by my side. David isn't Robert, I said simply. He takes the path of least resistance. That's because you and Robert made his life too easy, Gloria replied. That boy never had to fight for anything. There was probably some truth to that. David had been our miracle baby after years of trying, and we'd perhaps indulged him more than we should have. He'd always been sweet-natured but passive, letting others make decisions for him. It was one of the reasons I'd been concerned when he announced his engagement to Vanessa, who was clearly used to getting her way. Well, there's nothing to be done about it now, I said, straightening my shoulders. I'll respect their wishes and stay away from the shower. Gloria looked like she wanted to argue further, but instead said, Then let's have our own celebration that day. We'll go to that new restaurant by the lake and have a fancy lunch. Maybe invite Susan and Janice, too. The thought of sitting alone at home while the shower was happening had been unbearable, so Gloria's suggestion was a welcome one. That sounds nice, I agreed. Thank you. That's what friends are for, she replied, standing up. Now, let's heat up this lasagna. Everything looks better after good Italian food. As we moved to the kitchen, I felt a small measure of peace. I might not be welcome at the shower, but I wasn't alone. I had people who truly cared about me. 2 days later, I was getting ready for lunch with my friends when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway. Mrs. Reynolds? This is Lily, Caroline's assistant. I'm calling about the baby shower today. My heart skipped a beat. Caroline was Vanessa's mother, and I'd only met her assistant Lily once at the wedding. Yes? I said cautiously. We've had a bit of a disaster. The cake baker had an emergency and can't deliver the custom cake we ordered. Caroline is beside herself. She remembered you mentioning that you used to bake professionally, and were wondering if there's any way you could help us out. We'd pay you, of course. I was speechless for a moment. They didn't want me at the shower, but they wanted me to bake a cake for it? I'm sorry, but I don't understand, I finally said. David told me that Vanessa preferred I not attend the shower. There was an awkward pause on the other end of the line. Oh, Lily said quietly. I wasn't aware of that. Caroline just asked me to call you about the cake. She's handling several other issues right now. I could feel anger rising in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. Please tell Caroline that I have plans today and won't be able to help with the cake. Perhaps the restaurant can provide a dessert option instead." "Of course I understand," Lily replied, sounding embarrassed. "I apologize for the confusion." After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed, stunned by the audacity. I wasn't good enough to attend the celebration for my own grandchild, but I was good enough to bake for it. The thought made my blood boil. I finished getting ready with renewed determination to enjoy my day with friends. I chose a flattering blue dress I'd been saving for a special occasion and took extra care with my makeup. If I was going to survive this day with my dignity intact, I needed to look and feel my best. Gloria picked me up at 11:30, and we met Susan and Janice at the lakeside restaurant at noon. It was a beautiful place with large windows overlooking the water, and under different circumstances, I would have been excited to try it. "You look gorgeous, Margaret," Susan said as we sat down. "That color brings out your eyes." "Thank you," I replied, smoothing the fabric of my dress. I needed to feel good today. Janice reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Gloria told us what happened. I'm so sorry, honey. Some people just don't appreciate what they have." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. These women had been my friends for decades. They'd helped me plan David's birthday parties as a child, brought food when Robert was sick, and sat with me at his funeral. They really knew me, and the idea that I would cause drama at any event was laughable to them. "You know what?" Gloria said, raising her water glass. "I propose a toast. To Margaret, who will be the most loving, supportive, and fantastic grandmother any child could ask for, regardless of how her daughter-in-law behaves." "To Margaret," the others echoed, clinking their glasses against mine. I felt tears threatening again, but blinked them back. I'd done enough crying over this situation. "Thank you all," I said. "I don't know what I'd do without you." We ordered our food and tried to keep the conversation light, but inevitably it circled back to the situation with David and Vanessa. "Have you thought about talking to David directly?" Susan asked. "Really laying it all out for him?" I sighed. "I've tried, but he gets defensive. He says I don't understand how much pressure Vanessa is under with the pregnancy and her job." "And what about your feelings?" Janice asked. "Does he understand the pressure you're under, being excluded from your grandchild's life before it's even born?" "I don't think he sees it that way," I admitted. "In his mind, it's just one event." "But it's not just one event, is it?" Gloria pointed out. "It's a pattern. Christmas at her parents' house, Thanksgiving dinner, where she criticized your cooking, your birthday, that they forgot until I reminded them." I nodded, feeling the weight of all those small rejections. "I know, but what can I do? He's my son and I love him. I don't want to force him to choose." "The problem is, Margaret," Susan said gently, "he's already chosen, and it wasn't you." Her words hit me like a physical blow. I knew they were true, but hearing them spoken aloud made them real in a way I hadn't been ready to face. Our food arrived, momentarily distracting us. I picked at my salmon salad, my appetite gone despite the beautiful presentation. "I'm sorry," Susan said after a moment. "That was too harsh." I shook my head. "No, you're right. I've been avoiding the truth because it hurts too much, but denying it doesn't change anything." "So what will you do?" Janice asked. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I think I need to stop hoping things will magically improve and start setting some boundaries of my own." The conversation turned to other topics after that: Janice's upcoming cruise, Susan's new granddaughter, Gloria's volunteer work at the animal shelter. I tried to engage, but my mind kept drifting to the baby shower happening across town. Were they opening gifts now? Was Vanessa enjoying being the center of attention? Was David thinking about me at all? Or had he already forgotten that his mother should have been there? After lunch, Gloria drove me home. As we pulled into my driveway, she turned to me with a serious expression. Margaret, I want you to know that whatever you decide to do about David and Vanessa, I've got your back. We all do. I smiled gratefully. I know, and it means more than I can say. Will you be okay for the rest of the day? I can stay if you want company. I shook my head. I'll be fine. I think I need some time alone to think. After Gloria left, I changed into more comfortable clothes and made myself a cup of tea. The house felt especially empty today. I wandered into the living room, where photos of my family covered the walls and shelves. David's graduation, Emily's wedding, Robert and me on our 40th anniversary trip to Hawaii just 6 months before his diagnosis. I picked up a photo of David as a toddler, his chubby hands reaching for the camera, his face alight with laughter. I'd loved him fiercely from the moment I knew I was carrying him. Through childhood illnesses, teenage rebellions, college struggles, me love had never wavered. How had we ended up here? When had I become someone he could dismiss so easily? I set the photo down and walked upstairs to my craft room. The wrapped quilt sat on my work table, a gift that now had no recipient. I carefully unwrapped it, running my fingers over the intricate pattern of stars and moons in soft yellows and greens, gender neutral, since they'd decided not to find out if the baby was a boy or girl. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Emily, my daughter in Australia. Hi Mom, just checking in. How are you? Kids send their love. Call when you can to X. I stared at the message, a sudden idea forming. Emily had 3 children, my beautiful grandchildren, whom I rarely got to see in person. We video chatted regularly, and she always made sure the children knew who I was. They called me Grandma Maggie and sent me artwork and school projects. Emily made me feel included in their lives, despite the distance. I looked back at the quilt, then at Emily's message. Maybe the quilt wasn't without a recipient after all. I took a deep breath and called Emily. Despite the time difference, she answered on the second ring. Mom, I was just thinking about you. How are you? Hearing her voice brought fresh tears to my eyes. Oh, Emmy, it's so good to hear your voice. She immediately picked up on my tone. What's wrong? Is everything okay? Not really, I admitted, and then told her everything about the baby shower situation. Emily was outraged on my behalf. That's absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe David is letting her treat you this way. It's complicated, I said, though I appreciated her indignation. But I've been thinking. You know that baby quilt I was having made? The handcrafted one from your quilting friend? Yes, you said it was gorgeous. It is. And I was wondering, would Sophie like it? I know she's a bit old for a baby quilt, but it's really quite special. Sophie was Emily's youngest, just 4 years old. Mom, are you sure? I know how much that quilt means to you, and how much you were looking forward to giving it to David's baby. I'm sure, I said firmly. I'd rather give it to someone who still calls me Momand, whose children still call me Grandma. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Oh, Mom, Emily said softly. Sophie would absolutely love it, but what will you give David's baby? It was a fair question. Despite everything, I didn't want to punish my unborn grandchild for the actions of its parents. I'll find something else, I said. Something nice, but not something I put my heart into. I think that's wise, Emily replied. And for what it's worth, I think you're handling this with a lot more grace than I would. We talked for a while longer about her family and work, and I felt lighter by the time we hung up. The quilt would go to Sophie, who would love it and appreciate it. As for David's child, I'd find an appropriate gift from a department store, something nice but not personal. As evening fell, I expected to hear from David about how the shower had gone, but my phone remained silent. I thought about texting him but decided against it. The ball was in his court now. I was getting ready for bed when the doorbell rang. Puzzled, it was nearly 10 o'clock. I went downstairs and checked the peephole. David stood on the porch, shoulders slumped, hands in his pockets. I opened the door, my heart racing. David, is everything okay? Is it Vanessa or the baby? He shook his head. No, they're fine. Can I come in? I stepped aside to let him enter, noting the fatigue on his face. Of course, would you like some tea? No thanks, he said, following me to the living room. I can't stay long. Vanessa thinks I'm picking up ice cream. We sat on the sofa where I'd cried with Gloria just 2 days earlier. David looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time, though he'd grown up in this house. The shower was today, he finally said. I know. He met my eyes briefly, then looked away. There was a huge fight. Vanessa's sister said something about you not being there, and it turned into this whole thing between Vanessa and her mom. Apparently, Caroline told Vanessa it was mean to exclude you, but Vanessa insisted it was her shower and her decision. I waited, not sure what to say. Part of me was touched that Caroline had apparently stood up for me, while another part wondered why I was just hearing about this now. Anyway, David continued, I thought you should know that it wasn't Caroline's idea to keep you away. Vanessa told me it was, but her sister let it slip that Vanessa had insisted on it. A surge of anger rose in me. So Vanessa lied to you, and you believed her without question. David had the grace to look ashamed. I should have asked more questions, I know that now. But she's been so emotional with the pregnancy, and her doctor said stress isn't good for the baby. And what about my stress, David? Do you think it hasn't been stressful for me to be gradually pushed out of your life? To be told I'm not welcome at a celebration for my own grandchild? He looked down at his hands. I'm sorry, Mom, I didn't think about it that way. No, you didn't think about me at all, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. You haven't thought about me since you met Vanessa. Do you know her assistant called me today asking if I could bake a cake for the shower I wasn't allowed to attend? David's head snapped up. What? No, I had no idea. Of course you didn't. Because you're not paying attention, David. You're letting Vanessa make all the decisions, including ones that hurt me deeply. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father that it made my heart ache. I don't know what to do, Mom. I love Vanessa, and we're having a baby together. But I love you too, and I hate that things are like this. Then do something about it, I said firmly. Be the man your father and I raised you to be. Stand up for what's right. It's not that simple. It is that simple. I interrupted. Not easy, but simple. You're choosing the path of least resistance, David. You're avoiding conflict with Vanessa by allowing her to mistreat me. She doesn't mean to. Stop making excuses for her. I said, my patience finally snapping. Whether she means to or not, the result is the same. I'm being pushed out of your life and, by extension, my grandchild's life. David was quiet for a long moment. I don't want that, he finally said. I want you to be part of our lives, part of the baby's life. Then you need to make that clear to Vanessa, I said. Because right now, she's sending the opposite message and you're letting her. He nodded slowly. You're right. I'll talk to her. I'd heard that before, but something in his tone gave me hope that maybe this time would be different. I should get going, he said, standing up. Vanessa will wonder where I am. I walked him to the door, unsure whether our conversation had changed anything. Mom, he said as he stepped onto the porch, for what it's worth, I wished you were there today. It didn't feel right without you. Thank you for saying that, I replied, fighting back tears. I hope next time will be different. After he left, I went back to the living room and sat in the dark, thinking about our conversation. It had been more honest than any we'd had in years, but I wasn't naive enough to think one talk would fix everything. Still, it was a start. And after the day I'd had the lunch with my supportive friends, the decision about the quilt, and now this conversation with David, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. I couldn't control Vanessa or even David, but I could control my own actions and responses. I could choose to stand up for myself while keeping the door open for reconciliation. I could choose to value the relationships that valued me and return my daughter, my grandchildren in Australia, my friends. And maybe, just maybe, David would find the courage to create a family that had room for all of us, not just the people Vanessa approved of. As I finally went upstairs to bed, I thought about the christening that would likely happen a few months after the baby was born. If I wasn't invited to that, I knew what I would do. I would celebrate with the people who still called me mom, who still valued my presence in their lives. And I would send a nice, impersonal gift with a card signed Grandma Margaret, a reminder of who I was, whether Vanessa liked it or not. The weeks following the baby shower brought a tentative peace. David called more often, usually when Vanessa was at work. He'd ask about my day, tell me about the nursery they were preparing, share doctor's appointment updates. These conversations felt like thin threads being rewoven between us, fragile but present. Vanessa never called, never texted. When I sent a message asking how she was feeling in her third trimester, David replied on her behalf: "She's tired, but doing well. Doctor says everything looks good." I held my silence and my dignity. The beautiful handcrafted quilt was carefully packaged and shipped to Australia, where Emily sent me a video of little Sophie's delight upon receiving it. "Thank you, Grandma Maggie." She'd squealed, wrapping herself in it like a cape. "It's the prettiest blanket in the whole wide world." Those few seconds of genuine appreciation healed something in me. I watched the video dozens of times, each viewing a balm to the wound of the baby shower exclusion. I'd ordered a practical but expensive stroller for David and Vanessa's baby, the exact model from their registry. It would be delivered to their home when the baby arrived. Nice but impersonal, as I'd decided. A grandmother's duty fulfilled without the vulnerability of offering something from my heart. The call came on a Tuesday morning in early June. I was deadheading roses in my garden when my phone rang. It was David. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "Vanessa's in labor. We're at the hospital now." My heart leaped into my throat. "Already? But she's not due for another 2 weeks. The doctor says everything looks good. First babies are unpredictable." I gripped the phone tighter, soil-stained fingers leaving smudges on the screen. "Do you want me to come to the hospital?" There was a pause, a muffled conversation. My stomach clenched as I waited. "Not yet," David finally said. "Vanessa wants just the two of us until the baby arrives, but I'll call you first thing, I promise." I swallowed my disappointment. "Of course, that's understandable. Just keep me posted, please." "I will, Mom. I've got to go now." After we hung up, I sat on the garden bench, surrounded by the roses Robert and I had planted together when we first bought this house 40 years ago. They were in full bloom now, their perfume heavy in the June air. I should have been racing to the hospital, eager to welcome my first grandchild from David. Instead, I was sitting alone in my garden, shut out once again. I called Gloria, who answered on the first ring. "Vanessa's in labor," I said without preamble. "That's wonderful. Are you heading to the hospital?" "I wasn't invited. David said Vanessa wants just the two of them until after the baby arrives." Gloria made a noise of disapproval. "That's ridiculous. You're the grandmother." "It's their decision," I said, trying to sound more accepting than I felt. "David promised to call as soon as the baby is born." "And you believe him?" The question stung because it echoed my own doubts. "I have to," I replied simply. The waiting was excruciating. I paced the house, checking my phone every few minutes, jumping whenever it made any sound. By evening, there was still no news. I called David, but the call went straight to voicemail. I left a brief message asking for an update. Sleep was impossible. I lay awake, imagining what might be happening. Was the labor prolonged? Had there been complications? Or had the baby arrived hours ago, and they simply hadn't bothered to tell me? At 4:30 in the morning, my phone finally rang. I fumbled for it in the dark, heart pounding. David? Mom, he said, his voice thick with emotion. She's here. My daughter is here. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, 20 inches long. She's perfect. Tears sprang to my eyes. A girl? Oh, David. Congratulations. How is Vanessa? Exhausted but good. It was a long labor, almost 18 hours. And the baby is healthy? Everything's okay? Everything's perfect. She has a full head of dark hair and the nurses say she looks like me. I closed my eyes, trying to picture my granddaughter. What's her name? There was a slight hesitation. We decided on Olivia Caroline, after Vanessa's mom. I bit my lip, fighting back a wave of hurt. Not Margaret, not even a middle name. I'd expected as much, but the confirmation still stung. That's a beautiful name, I managed to say. When can I meet her? Another pause. That's actually why I'm calling so early. Vanessa's parents are coming at 9, and I thought maybe you could come at 11, before anyone else starts visiting. It wasn't ideal coming after Vanessa's parents, despite living half the distance, but it was better than I'd feared. 11 is perfect, I said, already mentally planning what to wear. Which hospital and room number? After getting the details, I asked, is there anything I can bring? Anything Vanessa needs? No, her mom is bringing everything, just yourself. I hung up and lay back on my pillow, a mixture of emotions washing over me. Joy at the birth of my granddaughter, hurt at being once again relegated to second place after Vanessa's family. Anxiety about the visit. Would Vanessa be cold? Would I say or do something wrong? But mostly I felt an overwhelming love for a tiny girl I hadn't even met yet, Olivia, my granddaughter. I rose early, too excited to sleep more. I showered and carefully selected an Outfita soft blue dress that Robert had always liked, not too formal, but nice enough to honor the occasion. I applied makeup with care, wanting to look my best for the first photos with my granddaughter. At 10 o'clock, I received a text from David. Can you come at 1 instead of 11? Vanessa's parents are staying longer. I stared at the message, disappointment weighing heavily. 2 more hours of waiting, and a clear message about the hierarchy of grandparents. Of course, I texted back. See you at 1. I called Gloria to pass the time, sharing the news about baby Olivia. Congratulations, Grandma, she said warmly. How does it feel? Surreal, I admitted. I haven't even met her yet. The hospital visit got pushed back to 1 o'clock. Let me guess Vanessa's parents needed more time. I sighed. Yes, but I'm trying not to read too much into it. The important thing is that I'll get to meet my granddaughter today. You're a better woman than I am, Margaret. I'd be raising hell. That wouldn't help anyone, least of all, baby Olivia. I need to play the long game here. At 12:30, I carefully placed a small gift bag on the passenger seat of my car. Inside was a silver bracelet with a heart charm, nothing elaborate, but a traditional gift I could explain as a family tradition if questioned. The expensive stroller had already been ordered for delivery to their home. I arrived at the hospital precisely at 1 o'clock, my heart fluttering with anticipation as I checked in at the reception desk. The volunteer directed me to the maternity ward on the 3rd floor, where I gave Vanessa's name at the nurse's station. Room 317, the nurse said with a smile. They're expecting you. I walked slowly down the hallway, rehearsing what I would say. I wanted to be warm but not overwhelming, interested but not intrusive. The delicate dance I'd been performing since David first brought Vanessa home. I knocked softly on the door of room 317. "Come in," David called. I pushed the door open to find a scene that stopped me in my tracks. Vanessa was in the bed, holding the baby. David stood beside them. And across the room, Caroline and Richard, Vanessa's parents, sat in the visitor chairs, looking completely at home. They hadn't left. They were still there, occupying the space where I was supposed to have my first moments with my granddaughter. "Mom," David said, coming to greet me with a hug. "Come meet Olivia." I hugged him back mechanically, my eyes fixed on the small bundle in Vanessa's arms. As I approached the bed, Vanessa looked up with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hello, Margaret," she said formally. "Meet your granddaughter." She turned the baby slightly so I could see her face, but made no move to hand her to me. Olivia was indeed beautiful, a cap of dark hair, pink cheeks, tiny pursed lips. My heart swelled at the sight of her. "She's perfect," I whispered, fighting back tears. "Absolutely perfect." "Would you like to hold her?" David asked, glancing at Vanessa as if seeking permission. Before she could respond, Caroline spoke up from across the room. "She just settled down. Maybe we should let her sleep a bit before passing her around again." I turned to look at Caroline, who at least had the grace to appear slightly embarrassed. They'd clearly been passing the baby among themselves before I arrived. "Actually," David said firmly, surprising me, "I think Olivia should meet her grandmother now." Without waiting for further comment, he gently lifted Olivia from Vanessa's arms and brought her to me. "Support her head," he instructed unnecessarily as he placed her in my arms. The weight of her, so light, yet so significant, brought a rush of memories. Holding David for the first time, the wonder and fear and overwhelming love. I looked down at Olivia's perfect face and felt the same emotions flooding back. "Hello, sweet girl," I murmured. "I'm your Grandma Margaret." Olivia's eyes fluttered but didn't open. She made a tiny sound in her sleep, her little hand escaping the blanket. I touched one finger to her palm, and instinctively, her fingers curled around it. The simple reflex brought tears to my eyes. "She's got a strong grip," I said, looking up at David with a tremulous smile. "Just like her dad did," I added, remembering how David's tiny fingers had gripped mine in the same way 35 years ago. I savored the moment, knowing it might be brief. Vanessa watched with an unreadable expression, while her parents conversed quietly in the corner, occasionally glancing our way. After a few precious minutes, Vanessa said, "I think she might need to be changed soon." It was a clear signal. I kissed Olivia's forehead and reluctantly handed her back to David, who returned her to Vanessa's arms. "I brought a small gift," I said, retrieving the bag from where I'd set it on the windowsill. "It's just a little bracelet for when she's older. A keepsake." Vanessa took the bag with a nod. "Thank you." "And the stroller from your registry should be delivered to your house next week," I added. "That's very generous," Caroline interjected. "We got them the crib and changing table set." I resisted the urge to point out that I hadn't asked. This wasn't a competition, though Caroline clearly saw it as one. "I'm sure everything will be beautiful," I said instead. "David mentioned you've been helping with the nursery." Caroline launched into a detailed description of the nursery design, the soft gray walls, the woodland creatures theme, the custom mobile she'd ordered from an artisan in Vermont. I listened politely, though each word was a reminder of another experience I'd been excluded from. After about 20 minutes, a nurse came in to check Vanessa's vitals. It seemed like a natural moment to leave, especially with Caroline and Richard showing no signs of departing. "I should go and let you rest," I said, standing up. "David, will you walk me out?" He nodded, leaning down to kiss Vanessa's cheek. "I'll be right back." In the hallway, I took David's hands in mine. "She's beautiful, David. Truly perfect. I'm so happy for you both." "Thanks, Mom." He squeezed my hands. "Sorry about the timing mix-up. Vanessa was feeling overwhelmed and wanted her mom to stay longer." I nodded, choosing not to point out that he could have been honest about that in his text. It's fine. I understand. When will you be taking her home? Day after tomorrow, if all goes well. The doctor wants to keep an eye on Vanessa's blood pressure for another day. Is she okay? I asked, concerned despite everything. She's fine. It's just a precaution. He hesitated, then added, we're going to be pretty overwhelmed for the first few weeks. Vanessa's mom is staying with us for 10 days to help out. I understood what he wasn't saying. Don't visit yet. Of course, I said, keeping my tone light. You'll have your hands full. Just let me know when you're ready for visitors. I'm happy to help in any way, bringing meals, doing laundry, whatever you need. David looked relieved. Thanks, Mom. I'll let you know. He hugged me goodbye, and I walked to the elevator with a heavy heart. I'd met my granddaughter, held her briefly, and now I was leaving while Vanessa's parents remained, firmly ensconced in their privileged positions. As the elevator doors closed, I took a deep breath and reminded myself, the long game. This wasn't about today, it was about building a relationship with Olivia over years and decades. I needed patience and persistence. The next month passed in a fog of brief, carefully managed interactions. I was allowed to visit twice, each time with clear parameters no longer than an hour. Preferably when Vanessa was napping, so David could have some support, without Vanessa feeling overwhelmed by too many people. During those visits, I held Olivia, marveling at how quickly she was changing. I brought home-cooked meals that David accepted gratefully. I didn't see Vanessa at all. Then, 6 weeks after Olivia's birth, David called with news. We've set a date for Olivia's christening, he said. July 28th at Vanessa's family church. My heart lifted. A christening was a significant family. Eventually, I would be included in this celebration. That sounds wonderful, I replied. Which church is it? St. Michael's, where Vanessa was christened herself. Her family has belonged there for generations. How nice to continue the tradition, I said sincerely. What time should I arrive? There was a pause that lasted a beat too long. Well, about that, David began, his tone immediately sending warning signals. The church has some restrictions on the number of guests for private ceremonies and with Vanessa's large extended family. I gripped the phone tighter, already knowing where this was heading. Are you saying I'm not invited to my granddaughter's christening? I asked directly, no longer willing to dance around these exclusions. It's not that you're not invited, David said quickly. It's just that the ceremony itself needs to be limited. There's a reception afterward at Caroline and Richard's house, and you're definitely invited to that. I see. My voice was steady despite the anger building inside me. So I can attend the party, but not the actual christening of my only granddaughter. Mom, please try to understand. Vanessa's family is huge, and they're all very involved in the church. Her grandfather was one of the founding members. It's important to them that family who are church members are present for the ceremony. And I'm not family? I asked quietly. David sighed. Of course you are, but this is important to Vanessa, and her family has certain traditions. Stop. I cut him off, surprising both of us with my firmness. I understand perfectly, David. Once again, I'm being pushed to the periphery of my granddaughter's life because it's convenient for Vanessa. That's not fair. No, it's not fair, I agreed. It's not fair at all, but I'm starting to realize that fairness isn't a consideration when it comes to my role in Olivia's life. There was a long silence. Then David said, So you won't come to the reception? I closed my eyes, considering my options. Refusing to attend the reception would only further distance me from Olivia. But attending after being excluded from the ceremony felt like accepting my diminished status in my granddaughter's life. I'll think about it, I finally said. Please text me the details. After we hung up, I sat motionless in my kitchen, staring at nothing. The pattern was clear now, impossible to ignore. First the baby shower, now the christening. What would be next? Birthday parties? School events? Graduations? I was being systematically erased from the significant moments of my granddaughter's life. I called Emily in Australia, not caring about the time difference. She answered sounding groggy. "Mom, is everything okay? It's 3 in the morning here." "I'm sorry, sweetheart," I said, suddenly realizing how selfish I'd been. "I didn't think about the time. I can call back later." "No, I'm awake now," she said, her voice becoming clearer. "What's wrong? You sound upset." I explained about the christening, the words tumbling out in a rush of hurt and anger. "That's outrageous," Emily said when I finished. "Absolutely outrageous. You're Olivia's grandmother, for heaven's sake." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "If I make a stand, I risk being cut off entirely. If I accept it, I'm letting them define my relationship with my granddaughter." "What would Dad have done?" Emily asked quietly. The question stopped me short. Robert had always been my compass, my strength. What would he have advised? "He would have been direct but dignified," I said slowly. "He wouldn't have accepted being sidelined, but he also wouldn't have created a scene." "Then there's your answer," Emily replied. "Be direct but dignified. Make it clear that this hurts you deeply, but don't close any doors." After talking with Emily, I called Gloria, who was predictably outraged. "Don't you dare go to that reception," she fumed. "Not after they've excluded you from the ceremony. It's insulting." "But if I don't go, I won't see Olivia," I pointed out. "Then David can bring her to visit you another time. You need to show some self-respect, Margaret." "Is it self-respect or pride?" I asked. "Because if it's just pride, maybe I should swallow it for Olivia's sake." Gloria sighed. "It's not about pride. It's about being treated with basic courtesy and respect. You're the baby's grandmother, not some distant acquaintance who can be invited to the party, but not the ceremony." She was right, I knew, but the thought of taking a stand terrified me. What if it backfired? What if it gave Vanessa the excuse she seemed to be looking for to cut me out completely? For the next week, I agonized over my decision. I drafted text messages to David that I never sent, practiced speeches I never delivered. I wanted to be firm without being confrontational, clear without being aggressive. In the end, a chance encounter made the decision for me. I was at the grocery store when I literally bumped carts with Caroline, Vanessa's mother. She looked startled to see me, then uncomfortable. "Margaret," she said with a forced smile, "how are you?" "I'm well, thank you," I replied. "How are the christening preparations coming along?" She had the grace to flush slightly. "Everything's on track. It should be a lovely day." "I'm sure it will be," I said. Then, gathering my courage, I added, though I must admit, I was disappointed to learn I wouldn't be welcome at the ceremony. Caroline's eyebrows shot up. "Not welcome? It's not that you're not welcome." "Then what is it exactly?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Because being invited to the reception, but not the ceremony, sends a pretty clear message. She glanced around as if looking for an escape route. "It's complicated. The church has restrictions, and Vanessa's family has been members for generations." "I understand that," I said. "What I don't understand is why, as Olivia's grandmother, I'm not considered important enough to be included in those limited spots. Especially when I live right here in town and have been asking to be more involved since before she was born." Caroline sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "If you want the truth, Margaret, Vanessa is still upset about some things that happened before the wedding. She feels you didn't make enough effort to welcome her into the family." I was genuinely confused. "What things? I've tried my best with Vanessa from the beginning." Caroline looked uncomfortable. "Look, I probably shouldn't be the one telling you this, but since you asked, Vanessa felt judged by you. She said you made comments about her career choices, her cooking, even how she and David were planning their future. I searched my memory for any such comments and came up blank. I don't recall ever criticizing Vanessa. There must be some misunderstanding. Well, that's how she felt, Caroline said with a shrug. And now, with a baby, she's been very clear about wanting to establish certain boundaries. Boundaries that include keeping the baby's grandmother at arm's length? I asked, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. Caroline had the decency to look embarrassed. For what it's worth, I told her I thought excluding you from the christening was taking things too far. Richard and I both did. But Vanessa was adamant, and David. She trailed off. And David went along with it. I finished for her, as he always does. Caroline nodded reluctantly. I'm sorry, Margaret, truly. If it were up to me, you'd be at the ceremony. A baby needs all her grandparents. I felt a surge of unexpected gratitude toward Caroline. Despite our awkward relationship, she at least recognized the wrongness of the situation. Thank you for being honest with me, I said. It helps to understand, even if I don't agree with Vanessa's perspective. We parted ways a few minutes later, and I finished my shopping in a daze, turning over Caroline's revelations in my mind. Vanessa felt judged by me. When had I ever criticized her? If anything, I'd been overly cautious about expressing any opinions around her, always afraid of saying the wrong thing. By the time I arrived home, I'd made my decision. I took out my phone and called David. Mom, he answered, sounding wary. Everything okay? I've been thinking about the christening, I said without preamble, and I've decided not to attend the reception. Mom, please. Let me finish, David, I interrupted firmly. I will not attend a reception celebrating a ceremony I was excluded from. That would be accepting a role in Olivia's life that I'm not willing to accept the role of a distant relative rather than a grandmother. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, I said, and we both know it. I ran into Caroline today, and she was honest enough to admit that Vanessa is deliberately keeping me at a distance because she felt judged by me before the wedding. Though she couldn't give me a single example of when I supposedly criticized her. David was silent for a moment. There were things you said. What things, David? Tell me specifically what I said that made Vanessa feel unwelcome. He hesitated. You made comments about her not wanting children right away, about her career being her priority. I asked if you two were planning to have children soon. I corrected. And when she said her career came first for a while, I said that was perfectly understandable in today's world. That wasn't criticism, David. That was conversation. Well, she took it as criticism, he said defensively. And that's the crux of the problem, I replied. Vanessa interprets any question or comment from me as criticism, and you enable that interpretation instead of clearing up the misunderstanding. So you're not coming to the reception at all, he asked, changing the subject. No, I'm not, but I would like to give Olivia a christening gift. Perhaps you could bring her by the day after, and I could give it to her then. I don't know if Vanessa... I'm not asking to see Vanessa, I said, cutting him off. I'm asking to see my granddaughter for half an hour, so I can give her a gift to commemorate her christening, a christening I've been barred from attending. Is that really too much to ask? David was quiet for a long moment. No, he finally said. That's not too much to ask. I'll bring her by the day after the christening. Around 2? 2 would be perfect, I agreed, a small victory warming my chest. Thank you, David. After we hung up, I felt lighter than I had in months. For the first time since this whole situation began, I'd stated my boundaries clearly and stood my ground. I wouldn't be attending a reception after being excluded from the ceremony, that much self-respect I owed myself. But I also wouldn't be cutting off contact or creating a scene. Direct but dignified, as Robert would have advised. The day of the christening arrived, and I deliberately kept myself busy. Gloria came over, and we spent the day working in my garden, planting new perennials and mulching the beds. Physical labor helped keep my mind off what I was missing. "So what's this special christening gift you're giving tomorrow?" Gloria asked, as we sat on the patio with iced tea, admiring our work. I smiled. "Remember that silver baby cup my mother gave David when he was christened? The one with the lambs engraved around the rim?" Gloria nodded. "The antique one. It's beautiful." "I'm giving the matching cup to Olivia," I said. "My mother had two, one for a boy and one for a girl. David got the boy version, and I've saved the girl version all these years." "That's perfect," Gloria said. "A family heirloom that connects Olivia to her heritage." "Exactly. And I've had her name and christening date engraved on it, just like David's was." Gloria squeezed my hand. "You're a good grandmother, Margaret, whether Vanessa recognizes that or not." The next day, I carefully polished the silver cup one last time before wrapping it in tissue paper and placing it in a gift box. I'd written a card explaining the cup's history and significance, how it had been in our family for generations, how my mother had given me both cups when Robert and I got married, with instructions to pass them on to my children's children. At 5 minutes to 2, the doorbell rang. I smoothed my dress and went to answer it, excitement bubbling in my chest at the thought of seeing Olivia. David stood on the porch, but he was alone. "Where's Olivia?" I asked, looking past him to the empty driveway. His expression was a mixture of embarrassment and apology. "Vanessa decided she didn't want Olivia out today. She said yesterday was overwhelming for her." I felt the blood drain from my face. "So you didn't bring her? After promising you would?" "I'm sorry, Mom. Vanessa was very upset about you not coming to the reception, and she's not in a good place right now." "And what about my place, David?" I asked quietly. "Have you given any thought to that?" He looked down at his shoes. "I know this is hard. I'm trying to balance everyone's needs here." "No, you're not," I said, the calm in my voice surprising even me. "You're balancing Vanessa's demands against everyone else's basic expectations. There's a difference." "Mom." "No, David. I've been patient. I've been understanding. I've accepted being excluded from my granddaughter's life in ways that no grandmother should have to accept. But I will not accept being lied to. You promised to bring Olivia today, and you broke that promise." He flinched at my words. "I didn't lie. Vanessa just decided this morning." "And you went along with it?" I finished for him, "as you always do." We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of years of small surrenders hanging between us. "I have a christening gift for Olivia," I finally said, retrieving the wrapped box from the side table in the entryway. "A silver cup that matches the one my mother gave you when you were christened. Do you remember it?" David nodded, looking pained. "The one with the lambs around the rim. It's still in my keepsake box." "This is its pair," I said, placing the box in his hands. "I've had Olivia's name and christening date engraved on it, just as yours was. It's a family tradition going back generations." David took the box, looking genuinely moved. "Mom, I don't know what to say. This is incredibly thoughtful." "You don't need to say anything," I replied. "Just make sure Olivia knows where it came from when she's old enough to understand. Make sure she knows she has a grandmother who loves her, even if she rarely gets to see her." His eyes filled with tears. "I want you in Olivia's life, Mom. I do." "Then make it happen, David," I said simply. "Because these constant exclusions and broken promises are damaging our relationship, and eventually, they'll damage your relationship with your daughter as well. Children are perceptive. Olivia will grow up noticing who's missing from family gatherings, and she'll draw her own conclusions." He nodded slowly, clutching the gift box. "I'll do better, I promise." I hope so, I said, because I'm running out of patience for promises that aren't kept. After David left, I called Emily. Despite the time difference, she answered right away. How did it go with Olivia? She asked eagerly. David came alone, I replied, the disappointment still fresh. Vanessa decided at the last minute that Olivia shouldn't go out. Emily's indignation was immediate and fierce. That's it? After everything, he couldn't even keep this one simple promise. Mom, this is beyond ridiculous now. I know, I sighed. But what can I do? She's his wife, and Olivia is their child. You can set consequences, Emily said firmly. You can stop accepting this treatment. Tell David that either he starts including you properly in Olivia's life, or what? I asked when she hesitated. Emily sighed. I don't know. I'm just so angry for you. No one should treat their mother this way, especially not after everything you've done for David. After we hung up, I sat in my living room, surrounded by family photos, and thought about Emily's words. Consequences. What consequences could I realistically set that wouldn't ultimately hurt me more than David or Vanessa? I couldn't cut off contact. I would never do that to my son, and it would only ensure I never saw Olivia. I couldn't force David to stand up to Vanessa. He had to find that courage himself. But I could redirect my energy and love to those who valued it. I could focus on the family members who still wanted me in their lives, who still called me mom with love and respect. The next morning, I made two decisions. First, I booked a flight to Australia for the following month, a 3-week visit to see Emily and her children. It was time I enjoyed the grandchildren who were eager to see me, who knew me as their beloved Grandma Maggie. Second, I called Susan, who volunteered at a local family shelter. The shelter is always looking for grandparent figures for the children, Susan had once told me. Many of these kids have lost contact with their extended families due to their situations. Susan, I said when she answered, remember you mentioned the shelter needing volunteer grandparents? Is that program still running? Absolutely, she replied. They're desperately short of volunteers right now. Are you interested? I am, I said, feeling a sense of purpose growing within me. I have a lot of grandmotherly love to give, and it seems a shame to waste it. 2 weeks later, I'd started volunteering twice a week at the shelter, reading stories to children, helping with homework, offering the kind of patient attention that only a grandmother can provide. The children were eager for affection, and I found myself looking forward to my volunteer days with growing enthusiasm. I had just finished a reading session with 2 of my favorite shelter children, 9-year-old Tasha and her 6-year-old brother Miguel, when my phone rang. It was David. Mom, he said, his voice sounding strained. We need to talk. I'm listening, I replied, stepping into the shelter's quiet office for privacy. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the christening, he said. About how we've been treating you, about the promises I've broken. He paused. I'm not proud of myself, Mom. Something in his tone made me pay closer attention. This wasn't the usual placating David. There was a new resolve in his voice. What's brought this on? I asked cautiously. Several things, he admitted. Finding the silver cup when I was unpacking my old keepsakes for Olivia's room. Seeing how happy Caroline is with her granddaughter while you're being kept away. But mostly, it was something Tara said. Tara? I asked, confused. Vanessa's sister? Yes, David confirmed. She came over yesterday to see Olivia, and she asked where you were. When I explained that you don't visit much, she seemed shocked. She said, but you're so close to your mom. How can you let Vanessa keep her away? I held my breath, sensing this was important. I tried to defend the situation, David continued, saying it was complicated, that Vanessa had her reasons. And Tara just looked at me and said, what reasons could possibly justify keeping a loving grandmother away from her grandchild? Mom would never have let anyone keep us from Grandma Jean, no matter what. That must have been uncomfortable, I said carefully. It was worse than uncomfortable, Mom. It was a wake-up call. His voice broke slightly. Tara said something else too. She said, "One day, Olivia will ask why her other grandmother isn't around, and what will you tell her? That you were too weak to stand up for what's right." I closed my eyes, feeling a rush of gratitude toward Tara, this unexpected ally. That hit me hard, David admitted. Because she's right. What will I tell Olivia? How will I explain that I let my wife's unfounded insecurities keep her grandmother away? Unfounded? I repeated, surprised to hear him acknowledge this. Yes, unfounded, he said firmly. After Tara left, I really pressed Vanessa about why she's so resistant to having you in our lives. She kept bringing up things you supposedly said or did years ago, but when I asked for specific examples, they were all either misunderstandings or things she'd built up in her mind. "I've been trying to tell you that," I said quietly. "I know, and I should have listened." He sighed deeply. "The truth is, Mom, Vanessa is jealous of our relationship. She didn't have a close relationship with her father. He was always working, always distant, and I think seeing how close we were threatened her somehow." This made a sad kind of sense. I'd noticed how Vanessa stiffened whenever David and I shared an inside joke or referenced a family memory. "So what happens now?" I asked, not daring to hope for too much. "Now I stop being a coward," David said with unexpected firmness. "I told Vanessa last night that things have to change. That you're Olivia's grandmother and have every right to be part of her life. That excluding you from the christening was cruel and unnecessary, and I was wrong to go along with it." "How did she take that?" I asked, my heart racing. "Not well initially," he admitted. "There were tears, accusations that I was choosing you over her, but I stood my ground, Mom. For the first time in our marriage, I really stood my ground on something important. Pride swelled in my chest, pride in my son for finally finding his voice. And in the end," he continued, "she agreed to try. She admitted that she's been unfair and that her feelings about you aren't based on anything substantive." "That's a start," I said cautiously. "It's more than a start," David insisted. "She wants to make things right. That's why I'm calling. We'd like to bring Olivia over tomorrow afternoon if you're free, all three of us." I felt tears spring to my eyes. "I'm free," I managed to say. "I'd love that." "There's one more thing," David added. "Remember the christening gift you gave? The silver cup?" "Of course." Vanessa cried when I explained its significance, when I showed her my matching one. She said it was the most thoughtful gift anyone had given Olivia. His voice softened. "And she feels terrible that you weren't at the christening to present it yourself." I didn't know what to say. After months of rejection and hurt, this sudden change felt almost unreal. "Mom, are you still there?" "I'm here," I assured him. "Just processing. This is a lot to take in." "I know, and I don't expect you to forgive us overnight. We've hurt you deeply, and I'm so sorry for my part in that. But I promise you, things will be different going forward." After we hung up, I sat in the shelter's quiet office for several minutes, letting the conversation sink in. Could things really change? Was Vanessa genuinely ready to welcome me into Olivia's life? I was afraid to believe it, afraid to have my hopes raised only to be disappointed again. Yet something in David's voice had been different, a resolve I hadn't heard before, a clarity that gave me cautious hope. The next day, I spent the morning preparing for their visit. I made fresh cookies, set out tea and coffee, and rearranged the living room furniture to accommodate Olivia's carrier. At 2 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find David, Vanessa, and Olivia on my porch. Vanessa looked nervous, clutching Olivia's carrier with white knuckles. David stood beside her, a reassuring hand on her back. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. Margaret, Vanessa began as soon as they entered the living room. Before anything else, I need to apologize. My behavior has been inexcusable. I looked at her closely, searching for signs of insincerity, but found none. Her eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying. I've been unfair to you from the beginning, she continued. I came into this family with preconceived notions about mother-in-law relationships, and I interpreted everything you said or did through that negative lens. Vanessa, I started, but she shook her head. Please, let me finish. This is important. She took a deep breath. When I saw that silver cup, when David explained its history and significance, I realized how much I've been depriving Olivia of. A grandmother who cherishes family traditions, who keeps heirlooms for decades to pass on at just the right moment. I glanced at David, who was watching Vanessa with a mixture of pride and relief. The christening was last month, Vanessa continued, but we're having a small family dinner next weekend to celebrate Olivia's baptism, not at Caroline's house, but at ours. And we'd be honored if you would come and present the cup to Olivia properly in front of the family. I was stunned. You want me to present the cup? Vanessa nodded, tears forming in her eyes. It should have been you at the christening, holding Olivia, presenting your family's traditional gift. I robbed you of that moment because of my own insecurities, and I'm so sorry. We both are, David added, taking Vanessa's hand. And we want to make it right, as much as we can. I looked at the carrier between them, where Olivia lay sleeping peacefully, unaware of the emotional reconciliation happening around her. This tiny girl, my granddaughter, who deserved to grow up surrounded by love from all sides of her family. I would be honored to present the cup, I said, my own eyes filling with tears. And thank you both for coming today, for taking this step. Vanessa surprised me by stepping forward and embracing me. Thank you for giving us another chance, she whispered. I promise things will be different. As we pulled apart, Olivia began to stir in her carrier. Vanessa immediately bent to unbuckle her, then straightened with the baby in her arms. Would you like to hold your granddaughter? She asked, already moving toward me. More than anything, I replied, opening my arms. As Vanessa placed Olivia in my embrace, something shifted in the atmosphere of the room. The tension that had defined our relationship for years seemed to dissolve, replaced by the simple, profound connection of 3 generations of women. Olivia blinked up at me with curious eyes. David's eye sand, I felt a surge of love so powerful it took my breath away. Hello, sweet girl, I murmured. It's your Grandma Margaret. 2 weeks later, I stood in David and Vanessa's dining room, surrounded by family from both sides. Caroline and Richard were there, along with Vanessa's siblings and their spouses. Gloria had been invited as my guest, a gesture of inclusion that meant more than Vanessa probably realized. Olivia, dressed in a beautiful white dress, was being passed from person to person, cooed over and admired. When she reached me, I held her close, savoring the weight of her in my arms, the sweet baby scent of her. If I could have everyone's attention, David called, tapping a spoon against his glass. The room quieted as all eyes turned toward him. As many of you know, my mother comes from a family with deep traditions, he began. One of those traditions involves a special christening gift that has been passed down through generations. Mom? He gestured to me, and I stepped forward, still holding Olivia. Gloria brought forward the silver cup, now removed from its box and polished to a high shine. I took it with my free hand and held it up for everyone to see. This cup, I said, my voice steady despite my emotions, has been in our family for over 100 years. My mother gave it to me when I married, with instructions to save it for my granddaughter. Today, I have the joy of presenting it to Olivia. I looked around the room, at the attentive faces of both families, now joined through this precious child. May this cup remind you, Olivia, I continued, speaking directly to the baby in my arms, that you come from a long line of strong women who love you deeply. And may it serve as a symbol of family traditions that connect us across generations. I placed the cup carefully on the table, then kissed Olivia's forehead. The room erupted in applause, and I saw tears in several eyes, including Vanessa's. Later, as I prepared to leave, Vanessa approached me with Olivia in her arms. "Margaret," she said softly, "I want you to know that Olivia will always know how much her grandma Margaret loves her. I promise you that." I looked at her, this young woman who had caused me so much pain, but was now offering such a precious gift a place in my granddaughter's life. "Thank you, Vanessa," I replied. "That's all I've ever wanted." As I drove home that evening, I thought about the journey of the past year, from the hurt of being excluded from the baby shower to the joy of this day. It hadn't been easy, and there had been moments when I'd wondered if I would ever truly be part of Olivia's life. But I'd stood my ground, maintained my dignity, and most importantly, kept my heart open. I'd redirected my love to those who valued me sheltered children, Emily's family, my loyal friends, while never giving up hope for reconciliation with David and Vanessa. And in the end, love had found a way. Not through grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but through a silver cup, a family tradition, and the simple truth that a child deserves all the love available to her, especially from a grandmother who never stopped calling her son son, even when he forgot to call her mom. I smiled as I pulled into my driveway, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The circle was complete now. The silver cups were with their rightful owner, sewn with my son, one with my granddaughter. And I was exactly where I belonged, in the heart of my family, no longer banned but embraced.